Good evening. This is an appeal to the United Nations from a former Filipino delegate to the United Nations General Assembly. I am Michael Francis Acebedo Lopez, a Filipino and a former delegate to the United Nations General Assembly. Nearly 10 years before the questionable rise of Vice President Leni Robredo to the second highest office of the land, I had the honor of representing my country, the Philippines, as the youngest Filipino delegate to the United Nations General Assembly in its history. I also had the opportunity to be the Philippines' first actual youth representative or delegate, a partial fulfillment of our commitment to the UN's World Programme of Action for Youth, or WPAY. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon accepted my letter of credential signed by the Philippine Foreign Minister. There it was stated that I was attending the General Assembly as, quote, advisor to the Third Committee plenary session on social development, including questions relating to the world social situation and to the youth, aging, disabled persons, and the family, unquote. In the august halls of the UN World Headquarters in New York, I also had the honor to draft and deliver the Philippine Statement to the General Assembly's Third Committee. In light of Vice President Robredo's video message to the UN Commission on Narcotic Drugs posted on Time Magazine's website and shared by various media organizations, I am recalling the mandate I was once given in an effort to reach out to all of you, member states of the UN and all organizations within the UN system. If said mandate is not sufficient because it has long since lapsed, I am hinging my appeal, therefore, on my being a natural-born citizen of one of only 4 Asian nations who signed the 1945 Charter that created the United Nations. I am making this urgent appeal on behalf of each and every Filipino grossly misrepresented by our Vice President in said video message. A Vice President whose own mandate has been called into question with the highest electoral tribunal of the land, the Presidential Electoral Tribunal, having considered the election protest against her win to be sufficient in both form and substance. With unfounded claims and unsubstantiated allegations, Vice President Robredo wantonly painted an impossibly grim image of the Philippine situation, if only to attract international attention and action. To say that she delved in speculation is understating the gravity of her made-up claims and the severity of the damage she has caused on our country and on our people in so doing. In reporting to the world what she failed to report to Philippine authorities, assuming there are actual reports received by the Office of the Vice President, she has not only embarrassed our country, she has betrayed the public trust and committed economic sabotage, both punishable under Philippine laws. For her to say that, quote, our people feel both hopeless and helpless, unquote, that is a brazen lie. Confidence in the presidency is at an all-time high, while the same cannot be said of the Vice President, whose approval ratings continue to plummet. As a people, we feel hopeful and empowered like we have never felt before. Please understand that at the heart of this is destructive party politics. It is the Vice President's party flexing its muscles to overthrow a duly elected government so they may once again regain control of government. Perhaps she feels time is running out because of developments in the Presidential Electoral Tribunal. So she and her allies have launched an expensive campaign using human rights and the war on drugs as their excuse to bait the world into interfering in our domestic issues. When the Vice President says 7,000 people have been killed in the President's war on drugs, she fails to mention that if this is an accurate number, it is set against the backdrop of around 7,000 or 700,000 to 1 million successful arrests and surrenders. I repeat, 700,000 to 1 million successful arrests and surrenders. So the figures she presents to you are not even 1%. And surely with the sheer number of those involved in the illicit drug trade, some police operations see suspects resisting arrest and fighting back, and so the police have to defend themselves, resulting in casualties. Every war has casualties. It is not a perfect war, and I'm certain there have been abuses along the way. And so these need to be looked into, and those responsible must be brought to justice. But exaggerating things does not help at all. In asking for the international community, the UN, to intervene, she uses the issue of human rights. Let us then talk about human rights. In responding to the call of Robredo, the international community must tread carefully, lest it encroaches on our very sovereignty and our right to self-determination. As a sovereign state, we have determined to wage an internal war, not a war against another nation, an internal war against the evils of drugs, a direction affirmed by our democratic processes when President Duterte, who included the war on drugs as one of his main programs of action, received an overwhelming mandate during the May 2016 presidential election. In short, the war on drugs, by extension, has the people's mandate. Any effort to disturb our democracy and sovereignty as a response to Vice President Robredo's irresponsible and unfounded claims will subvert the will of the Filipino people and violate our human right of suffrage, a right enshrined in both the Philippine Constitution, in our Bill of Rights, and in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, particularly Article 21 of the International Covenant. Once again, I am making this appeal, this most urgent appeal, to all member states of the United Nations and all organizations within the UN system to disregard the Philippine Vice President's statement, which is, I reiterate, a grave misrepresentation of the prevailing sentiments of our people and a gross perversion of the facts surrounding the war on drugs. To my fellow Filipinos, let us remain vigilant in the face of threats to our democracy. Threats being waged on us by the very people who claim to defend it. Ako po'y nananawagan na i-share ang video na ito upang ito ay umabot sa UN at sa iba't ibang foreign governments. Maraming salamat. Good evening.
David Borden, Executive Director of the DRC Net Foundation, Marco Perduca, former member of the Italian Senate, Chito Gascon, Chairperson of the Commission on Human Rights, Alison Smith, Legal Counsel and Director of International Criminal Justice Program, No Peace Without Justice, all the other sponsors of this event, ladies and gentlemen, a good day to all of you. We are heartened that the issue of extrajudicial killings in the Philippines today is being discussed in an event such as this. To know that the international community's eyes are on us and to feel that human rights advocates are watching over our country gives us comfort, courage, and hope. It is already February 2017, and the body count due to drug-related killings keeps growing. We are now looking at some very grim statistics. Since July last year, more than 7,000 people have been killed in summary executions. We agree that our people deserve nothing less than a safe environment, so that anyone can walk the streets safely, whether in daylight or at nighttime. But drug abuse should not be treated as one that can be solved with bullets alone. It must be regarded as it truly is, a complex public health issue, linked intimately with poverty and social inequality. As it is, in some areas in Manila where poverty is rampant, residents tell us that communities are rounded up in places like basketball courts, women separated from men, those with tattoos asked to stand in a corner, their belongings searched. People are told that they didn't have any right to demand for search warrants because they were squatters and did not own the properties on which their houses were built. They told us of the Palit Ulo scheme, which literally means exchange heads, where the wife or husband or relative of a person in a so-called drug list will be taken if the person himself could not be found. Some of those have told us that when there's crime, they normally go to the police. Now they don't know where to turn to. Our people feel both hopeless and helpless, a state of mind that we must all take seriously. This is why the Office of the Vice President supports the rehabilitation of drug dependents. You cannot kill addicts and declare the problem solved. The solution is to design the proper health, education, and psychosocial interventions to prevent further drug use and help them transition into productive members of society. Another challenge is to drum up legal and psychological support for those who may have undergone trauma due to extrajudicial killings. We believe that when the public knows its rights under the Philippine Constitution, when the community is united in this knowledge, our people will be better protected. We must tread carefully on this, however, because in some cases reported to us, those who ask for a search warrant, for instance, have been beaten and physically abused for doing so. We must all demand greater transparency in the government's war on drugs, because this is a major publicly funded campaign. Our leaders must be honest about the basis of the drug war. What exactly is the scope of the drug problem? Why do numbers about the extent of the problem change, as officially reported to the nation by our president, inconsistent? We believe that any campaign against illegal drugs must be founded on integrity. The public must ask why no one is being held accountable. The public must be watchful. Around 500 complaints have been filed at the Commission on Human Rights and recommended to the Department of Justice for filing of cases. But until now, 7 months into the administration's drug war, no information has been filed. On top of this, there's a brewing problem. Death penalty might soon return, and the age of criminal liability might be brought down to 9. We believe this to be a huge mistake because death penalty for nonviolent offenses violate UN treaties and international human rights norms. Last Friday, a day before the EDSA People Power Revolution's 31st anniversary, we called the President to task on this. On behalf of the Filipino people whose daily struggles are escalating, we asked him to focus on the war that really matters, the war against poverty, instead of just the war against drugs. In a public statement, we asked him to direct the nation towards respect for rule of law instead of a blatant disregard for it. We asked him to uphold basic human rights enshrined in our Constitution instead of encouraging its abuse. We asked him to be the leader he promised to be and evoke in our people hope and inspiration instead of fear. We told him, do not allow the lies to distort the truth. We also asked the Filipino people to defy brazen incursions on their rights. Our people have fought long for our rights and freedoms. The Filipino nation has come so far since our country's darkest days. We are not about to back down now. Thank you all for listening. May you have a fruitful discussion moving forward. The Office of the Vice President is looking forward to deepening this conversation further with